Welcome, everyone. If you're joining us, please make sure that you are muting your microphone as we get started here. My name is Carrie Match-Coury, and we hope that you're having a great day and learning so much at the Institute so far. These 2 days are full of great learning opportunities and sessions to expand your knowledge and learn new strategies. So it's great to see you all here. Just a few housekeeping reminders before our presentation. So you can always visit the MACAE website for important updates and information. Check out our monthly membership check-ins as well. Those are also on YouTube. Please don't forget to join us this afternoon at 2:30 right after this session for a special conversation with Latoya Newsom, the new director of OCTE, the Office of Career and Technical Education. We are so grateful she's taking the time to speak to us in Michigan, and we want to show a broad support for that. The recordings from today and all the presentation materials will be made available to you. Don't forget to check your email for the link to the sketch validation form if you need sketches. Remember to complete that form at the end of the Institutes tomorrow and submit them by Friday, May 19th. Remember, at the end, you will complete that. We encourage you to be on camera so we can create a community of learning and also to put any questions you have into the chat. Please also stay muted unless you are asking a question. We'll have time for Q&A during the presentation. With all that, I would like to introduce our presenters for today. So we have from Safal Partners, Michelle Carson, Nicole Klues, and Katie Adams presenting this session on connecting the dots between IET and registered apprentice programs. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's a pleasure to be joining you all today. I hope that the conference is exceeding your expectations. Nicole, Michelle, and I are grateful for the opportunity to be presenting to you. As Carrie indicated, my name is Katie Adams. I'm Chief Delivery Officer at Safal Partners. We are a national technical assistance leader and management consultancy working at the nexus of workforce and education. Today's session is really designed to help give you some tools, some guidance and promising practices around connecting your IET programs to apprenticeship through registered and pre-apprenticeship programming. So we're going to describe some knowledge gaps that we've identified around registered apprenticeship for adult educators and preliminary findings from a survey that Nicole is going to be speaking to. We're going to talk a little bit about how to close those knowledge gaps and increase your and your team's awareness on how to link your program to registered apprenticeship programs. Identify some strategies to map your IET program to pre-apprenticeship and RA using several tools that are readily available to you through the work that Safal is doing for the Department of Labor, which I'm going to touch on in just a moment, and some tremendous work that our team has done over with the Department of Education on a design toolkit. Next slide. So just as a quick background, Safal Partners has the pleasure of leading a Registered Apprenticeship Technical Assistance Center of Excellence for the Department of Labor. That work we are leading, it's a national center of excellence. It's focused on building strategic partnerships, which we're going to talk about today, how to equip your team to strategically partner, particularly with industry around apprenticeship, and to increase alignment between our nation's apprenticeship system and our workforce and education systems. Next slide, please. Through the center, we provide no-cost technical assistance to stakeholders that are currently or hopefully will be engaged in apprenticeship, including stakeholders from government, from industry, from workforce, from education. We provide groups, organizations such as yours at a state and local level with tools and resources to be able to build partnerships and engage effectively in apprenticeship, and to coordinate with other federal and state investments around apprenticeship expansion as well. Fantastic. Next slide, please.
It's me. Hey, everybody, welcome, and good afternoon, Michigan. I can officially say good afternoon to everybody in Michigan, I think. My name is Nicole Klues. I am an education and workforce consultant for Safal Partners, or I almost said Safal Partnership, because Kitty was talking about partnership, Safal Partners. And I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing for the center to support adult ed. We're going to do a little bit of a survey, so get that camera out. It, can't be a Zoom presentation without a good old QR code, right? And then talk about what we're doing with this baseline assessment. So as we start to take this assessment, and as I set this up for you all, I just want to explain a little bit. So get your camera out, and I want to ask everybody, how would you rate your overall knowledge of registered apprenticeship? Because what we did at the center, and maybe some of you all took this survey, but we disseminated a nationwide survey through COAE. And basically what we're trying to get is, what is the support needed within the adult education field for pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship? And as Katie talked earlier, with the center's mission is then how do we identify those gaps and work collaboratively to build TA resources to support you all in what you're doing at various levels in various organizations and parts of the state. So, okay, thank you guys. So I see apprenticeship awareness, very well, it spans, but I see we have no experts in here besides Katie Adams. But what we see here is so I see it spanning and very little, which is you guys are in the right spot, because we have so many great resources already, and then we're going to continue to build them. So we're excited to share some of these resources we have ready to go today. And then as Katie talked about, ways we can partner in the future. So we're going to do one more, and this was asked in the nationwide survey too. So just a heads up. And then the other one is, how would you rate your knowledge of registered apprenticeship programs currently available in your state or region, or I should have replaced this within Michigan because it's tailored to you guys. Okay. And I have no doubts these will kind of match up with potentially, if you didn't have a lot of knowledge of registered apprenticeship, you might not know some of the supports and programs in your state or region. Okay. Okay, well, thank you all. And then I'm going to share some of the survey results from our national survey. And just a heads up, we have a report coming out in the next month on what the results of that nationwide survey are. And we had over 1,200 respondents within the survey, again, partnership with COAE. And then we'll be sharing those results, and then also some TA resources we're going to develop. And then we have a TA resource we're going to be sharing with you here today. So thank you all for sharing, and excited to share more about apprenticeship and IET and the merger of the two in this presentation. So the preliminary finding of the centers, and this was the nationwide one, so the 1,200, for awareness, we saw about 75% was the average on know where to access registered apprenticeship state specific and general resources. So they're not experts, but they can get to where they're going, but need some more support. And then also 60% said, hey, we need some how-to guides. We need employer engagement guides. We need resources to kickstart this and then tailor to our specific local and state, system, if you will, and what's going on in the local workforce, et cetera. And then collaboration. I love this because I have a feeling you guys might want to collaborate as well, but how do we then, when we're building these TA resources, getting feedback, create more collaboration and sharing these resources, and also iterating these resources in a state and also around the country. So 69% are like, hey, I want to be part of this focus group. I want to get more input on what resources we need out here in Michigan, out here in California, out here in Rhode Island. So those are some of the preliminary findings of that survey. And again, we're going to have a report come out. And Katie probably will briefly touch upon this, but we did have another report come out of the center on workforce, and I will share that within the chat with you all, so you can take a look at that too, and we'll be giving you lots of links throughout this, but I just want to preview that as well. And then what are some challenges in aligning adult education with registered apprenticeship? So I'm going to toss it to my colleague, Michelle Carson, who unfortunately is having some camera issues, but I want to make sure she's here.
I broke the first rule that was set by the moderator that
You would, Michelle.
To start with engagement, and I do apologize. It's been a glitchy thing this whole week for me. So to start with, we really do just want to acknowledge a couple of things that we know can inhibit adult education programs in integrating IET with our pre-apprenticeship, or registered apprenticeship program. So the first thing is that awareness component, just knowing about how to do it, where to find the resources, how to access them, the tools and the people to support it. It means finding ways to build on what's already being done through your IET programs and then connecting that with pre-apprenticeship and RA programs. So it's not just an add-on, which happens a lot of times in our programs, right? It's just one more thing that we have to do. Just as an IET program is never developed in isolation or just by one person. Aligning an IET program with a pre-apprenticeship program or a RAP is a team effort. So it's super helpful to include industry and apprenticeship representatives to co-plan and co-define your curriculum for the related training instruction. And Katie will talk us through that a little bit. I'm going to use some terminology here, probably ahead of what we may be, but she'll clue us in here in a few. And IET from the outset. So the last potential challenge is coordination with the state and local workforce boards to co-enroll eligible students in WIOA Title I services and RAPs. But the good news is these are all surmountable, and we at the Center of Excellence with Katie and team are here to help. So to set the context, let's just review the makings of an IET, and then Katie will walk us through pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship. So to start with, there's a lot here to break down in terms of the definition, and many of you will be familiar with this. I'm on the next slide, I think. Yeah. Okay. So it's a service approach that provides adult education and literacy activities concurrently and contextually with workforce preparation activities and workforce training for a specific occupation or occupational cluster for the purpose of educational and career advancement. So the key things here are the concurrently and contextually. So it has to happen at the same time and within a context, which is provided by the specific occupation or occupational cluster, which the registered apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship program can provide. And then embedded within that are those workforce preparation activities, which go well beyond just the things we think about in terms of a resume preparation or how to dress for success. It's those much more transferable skills that go across occupations, like digital literacy, how to work in a team, how to locate information, how to manage resources. So all of those things, again, sometimes referred to in some places as employability skills, the soft skills, which I don't prefer that term because I feel like they are the harder skills sometimes and things that employers definitely look for most in their new ongoing and upcoming potential talent there. So the three components, again, I've already talked through this a little bit, but some of the other pieces we need to consider are that there has to be sufficient intensity and quality, which the intensity component will come back around to this piece where there's a requirement in the pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship of having so many hours of instruction. It has to be based on the most rigorous research. And again, this leads us to think about in terms of the things that we do know in adult education around great reading, what does that look like for reading instruction and literacy instruction, as well as the things that we know about mathematics or some of the other areas that we teach in adult education. We've already talked about the simultaneous. Another benefit of working through and with an RA program is access to those occupationally relevant materials that you need in order for an IET to be as defined, to be able to be relevant. And then all of that has to be organized through a single set of learning objectives that includes the adult education content standards, the workforce prep skills, and then the workforce training competencies, as well as be part of a career path. So I'm going to send it over to Katie to talk about what is apprenticeship, and then align, so that we can align those two things and connect the dots. Thanks, Katie.
Great, thank you. And I'm really enjoying the chat. So please use this as a way to engage both with us and with your colleagues around this topic in the chat. So apprenticeship, just as a quick table set, because the word apprenticeship can be interpreted a lot of different ways. What we're talking about is registered apprenticeship, which is considered the gold standard for workforce development. And that's because it is a structured, it takes a structured framework that employers, unions, or other sponsors, and we'll touch on that in just a minute, can customize to their specific occupational needs. And it marries both theoretical instruction with practical hands-on work-based learning. It is the most proven solution, most time-tested solution for developing a skilled and knowledgeable workforce. Registered apprenticeship is industry-driven, and it's high quality, and it enables employers to upskill current workers, as well as recruit and better retain new hires. I will note that it is a few quick misperceptions. It is not only for skilled trade roles, unions, or entry-level jobs. Apprenticeship can be used, I believe there are currently upwards of 1,700 occupations that have been approved as apprenticeable by the Department of Labor. Easy for me to say, right? And crossing every industry and spectrum and sector. It's for businesses of all sizes and all sectors. The baseline is expectation is that apprenticeship programs will be a minimum of 1 year and include 144 hours of related instruction. We're going to touch on that in just a moment, because that's where you come in. Increasingly, it's a new tool for businesses to consider adding to their human capital strategy. Up until probably within the last 10 years, if you ask most employers about apprenticeship, their immediate perception is of a union skilled trade occupation. And while the unions have created a rich history from which we are building apprenticeship programs, last year was the first year in which there were actually more apprentices in the United States in active apprenticeship programs in non-skilled trade occupations such as in healthcare industry, in IT, banking, finance. And apprenticeship is a WIOA aligned strategy across all titles. So let's, next slide, please. Let's just touch very briefly on these core components. Apprenticeship is a job from day one. It is a form, an employer, there has to be an employer that is providing paid on-the-job learning. That employer is going to either sponsor the program themselves or work with a partner sponsor to customize it for their specific occupational needs. But that employer is going to provide then the second component, structured on-the-job learning for an apprentice. We're going to actually peek at what that looks like documentation-wise, because there's some documents that you're going to want to know about to be able to map your programs directly to those occupations. So the employer selects and hires the apprentice. They're going to provide structured on-the-job learning so that when that apprentice completes, they have all of the skills, knowledge, and tools needed to be a professional in that occupation. That on-the-job learning is done under the supervision of an experienced mentor. In addition, the apprentice is going to complete related instruction or related technical instruction, sometimes referred as. That means that every apprentice completes approximately 144 hours, seat hours, not academic credit hours, of instruction every year, because one of the unique aspects of apprenticeship, as opposed to potentially some other forms of work-based learning, is that we want apprentices, not just we want, but what apprentices actually do is they both learn the how of the job through that on-the-job learning, but they're going to learn the why through related instruction. They're going to learn why they need to use the tools they need, why they need to employ the processes that are set out for that occupation. The fourth component is because apprenticeship is a paid job, at the beginning of their apprenticeship, as they register as a sponsor is working on the paperwork with, and it's just one document, with that apprentice, they will actually see outlined that that apprentice is going to start at wage rate number 1. And then if they successfully complete either time-based portions of their program, if it's a time-based program, or they meet the competencies required, it's a competency program, they will actually see when they can expect to receive wage increases, a minimum of 1 over the course of the program, so that when they exit, they are making the same pay as what's termed a journey worker, an experienced professional in that occupation. That apprentice is also going to earn at least 1 nationally recognized occupational credential at the end of their program, a DOL journey worker certificate. Increasingly, apprentices are actually earning more than 1 credential, excuse me, or industry certification that is also embedded in their apprenticeship program, typically through the related instruction. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, apprenticeship is not just for skilled trades anymore, although it is highly and widely used and will always be highly and widely used within the skilled trades. It's spanning all sectors, as you can see, just a quick snapshot here. And you have companies including Microsoft, Tesla, Walmart, all utilizing registered apprenticeship now because they recognize they need to add tools to their workforce development strategy toolkit. Let's peek at what it means to have an apprenticeship ecosystem on the next slide. Nicole, can you pop that up? Perfect, thank you so much. So one of the things that is true about apprenticeship, again, is potentially opposed to maybe some other forms of work-based learning, is that successful apprenticeship programs really do rely on a strong network of partners. There are a couple of noted stakeholders within the apprenticeship ecosystem here. The first being a sponsor. There needs to be an entity that is going to take responsibility for effectively running the program. That sponsor may or may not be the employer. You can have what's called group sponsors, intermediary sponsors, such as workforce boards, community colleges, high schools, nonprofit organizations, industry associations, chambers of commerce. The Department of Labor changed the eligibility guidelines for sponsorship to allow a larger host of entities to sponsor the program. But there has to be a sponsor and there has to be an employer that is going to provide the OJT. Intermediaries can provide technical assistance and program support, and in some case, funding to offset some of the costs. Of course, workforce boards can play a huge positive role in registered apprenticeship programs by sourcing candidates, by providing WIOA eligible apprentices with supportive services, potentially helping employers with offset some wages through on-the-job training contracts, potentially paying for training through individual training accounts. Workforce boards have a huge role to play and hopefully supporting your students as apprentices. And then the training provider. Again, we touched on that related instruction. There needs to be an entity that is going to provide instruction for that occupation. Instruction can be provided by one or several training providers, and your programs, your IET programs in particular, are really well suited to provide at least a portion, if not potentially all, of the related instruction for a pre or registered apprenticeship program. And then lastly, the apprenticeship office. In every state, there is either a U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship or a state apprenticeship agency. I'm not sure if we have a slide in here, so I'll pop it in the chat. On apprenticeship.gov, you can find out what your state apprenticeship agency office is. That office is going to be the office responsible for registering and monitoring programs, and also assisting with support throughout the apprenticeship life cycle. Next slide. And I think we're going to, now with that quick background of apprenticeship, and I know that there's so much more we could unpack there, which is why the Center of Excellence exists, but I would like to just use that as a way of now making the connection with IET programs. Michelle, I'd love for you to speak to this.
Sure. So here's where we're going to get into how adult education IET programs intersect with registered. So for businesses, adult education supplies a pool of candidates. I like to say that adult education programs nationally represent the largest high school in America, with the added difference that many of our learners have both prior life and work experience that makes them even more attractive as potential employees. Usually adult education can also deliver the relevant workforce prep and workforce training competencies at low to no cost, which can map to the registered apprenticeship required related technical instruction component. The work we do, if designed correctly, can actually accelerate the learner's entry to further training and employment for in-demand careers. So Katie, could you share a little bit more about how adult education IET program providers can connect with other partners to develop a successful pre-apprenticeship program?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. It really is important for adult education partners to link up, starting hopefully with your local apprenticeship training rep for the Michigan office. I just came out of a national conference, so Carrie, thank you for reminding me. We have one state office that we need to focus on here, but linking up with your state apprenticeship training representative in your area is really critical. They're going to be able to help you identify other potential partners in the area, as well as with your local workforce board. Your local workforce board may already be engaged in apprenticeship as well, but those would be two really important partners to start with. The workforce, the apprenticeship training rep is also going to be able to not only help you kind of get your arms around what apprenticeship pathways could look like to your program, but they can let you know what programs are active in your area, who the sponsors are, and then the workforce board can also help identify other potential supportive services that they are already providing to programs in the area for WIOA eligible apprentices, such as potentially your candidates. So. Okay, with that, yeah. Nicole.
Thank you, Katie. I'm going to talk a little bit about pre-apprenticeship and IET, what and how, and then pass it over to Michelle to connect the dots to build your pre-apprenticeship and to wrap from your IET. So let's start out with what is pre-apprenticeship. Prepare individuals for registered apprenticeship programs and to earn that industry credential. It also provides sponsors with established pipeline of candidates. And as Katie talked about, it is spanning many, many fields now. And I don't know if you all heard, but there's also a teacher apprenticeship that's taking off as well. So the future of apprenticeship continues to grow and grow. It is not federally regulated, so more flexibility in developing and selecting components and establishing those requirements within your IET program. So looking at the hallmarks of a high quality pre-apprenticeship program, the first one is those transparent entry and success requirements. Clearly articulating to your students any stipulations or any skills needed. And also within those skills, if there are any gaps, how could you support your student on that journey to build up those skills, whether it's various academic, employability, or those social emotional skills, and provide those guardrails and that support. And also, you know, other skills such as we know, self-management, self-efficacy, persistence, support throughout the pre-apprenticeship journey to get into the registered apprenticeship. And then number two is training and skills sought by local employers and high quality apprenticeship programs. Again, looking at the local workforce, what is the need there? And then supporting the participants in acquiring those employability skills and some of the soft skills, as Michelle talked about, which are really very, as we all know, very, very important to workplace success. You know, teamwork, problem solving, that initiative, that flexibility, that reliability, very, very important. And then also within this skills, aligning the curriculum with the employer pathways. So the students set up for success as they go into that pre-apprenticeship, and then also designing that instruction and training to reach all populations. Number three is skills training, hands-on activity, and on-the-job learning that's been previously discussed, but embed those hands-on activity into the curriculum, into this on-the-job learning that's relevant to that target occupation. And then also prioritize opportunities for this on-the-job learning in which participants complete meaningful job tasks within the workplace. Number four is student support for persistence, orientation to the industry and exposure to the range of occupations, career paths, wages, information about the job opportunity, and really aligning with career interests as you all support your students in finding their passions, supporting them in their passions, and, you know, getting that job, earning that money, getting that credential. And then also with the support for assistance, the wraparound services, again, which you all do, making sure that transportation, housing, childcare support, any mental health, social emotional support is there for the student to be successful, and those mitigation, those different strategies to support if things come up, because we all know things happen, life comes up, and what are those plans, those backup plans as well to support that persistence. And then, as we talked about, this results in one or more industry recognized credential. So it facilitates earning that credential that supports that direct entry into the workforce, into various in-demand career occupations, and also facilitates earning credentials that can be stackable and portable as students continue their career pathways. And then ding, 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 direct entry into registered apprenticeship programs. So again, partnering with those industry, employers, unions, intermediaries, and public workforce boards and systems that facilitate placement, and work with those program sponsors to determine that, and just your support's available. And like Katie said, we know we're talking to Michigan today, you know, the state to support as well. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Michelle, who's our in-house IET expert, and developed the IET toolkit that's on Octave, which we'll share with you all. But Michelle, I'll pass it over to you to start to talk about mapping IET to pre-apprenticeship.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. So I'm curious to know, and you can just add this in the chat, how many of you are familiar with the IET design camp or any of the materials from the design camp? If you could just add that to the chat, that'd be great to see your familiarity with those tools. And no? Okay. Yeah, no or yes is good.
This isn't a gotcha, but this is a there's
yeah,
another one.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So this for those of you who have seen them, this might look a little bit familiar to you. What we're going to talk about today is just one approach. You can obviously take any number of ways to build a program like you do every day in your adult education programs, but this is the approach that was presented in the IET design camp on how to develop an IET program. So there's the research and assess phase. That's the part where you're assembling your team. Like we said, none of this is done in isolation. So it's identifying those preliminary things. This has to do with identifying a potential registered apprenticeship program you could connect to. It's identifying your resources and staff, and then the student population that you would want to be serving with this program. And it's good to keep in mind, IET isn't for everyone, just like registered apprenticeship isn't for everyone. So it is, there may be, I know I saw earlier in the chat, I've been trying to keep up, but I'm sure things are sliding by, about working with English language learners or new immigrants and the populations regarding, you know, some employers aren't necessarily interested or may have limited interest in working with this population. So I think it's good to understand where those things all align with an employer. And then it's also good to understand where there might be resources and tools to help you educate employers on how they can work with different populations as well. And that's part of the Center of Excellence, a role in this whole project. Again, this is one way to approach the design process. And central to this is the learner and the community. And as Katie said, that community includes the businesses in your area that would be interested in aligning with the adult education IET program in order to provide an opportunity to that learner to accelerate their career and educational pursuits. Again, it's this whole idea of collaboration with partners, the hallmark and cornerstone of what the center is doing, and then to continuously look at ways to improve and adopt, you know, that kind of mindset as you're working through this process. To just know it is iterative, even once you have something fairly solidly in place, just like any good lesson plan, or we're always looking at ways to improve and tweak those. Next slide. That's why I'm going to turn it over to Katie to talk a little bit how in that first phase with research and assess, how you might go about thinking about the connecting with the RA system.
Yeah, so up until about 2015, up until 2015, there had been no national sort of campaign, as it were, or intentional national marketing of apprenticeship, and no funding to expand apprenticeship in the US. That changed in 2015 with the first ever block of grants that were awarded for state apprenticeship expansion. And since 2015, hundreds of millions of dollars have been utilized to create national industry intermediaries, youth intermediaries as well. And so as well as just grant funding across a number of apprenticeship opportunities. So there's an increasing awareness of the apprenticeship system, but most people, and in fact, a majority of workforce system professionals that we surveyed, 51% said they don't understand or know what the role is of the Office of Apprenticeship in their state, and they don't have a relationship with anyone in that system. The registered apprenticeship system is your first point of contact for both understanding apprenticeship and understanding the opportunities to engage with sponsors and programs active in your state. Your state apprenticeship system can help you identify local sponsors with whom you can start discussing how you can connect your IET program, at least to start as a pre-apprenticeship program. The ATR or the state director in the state should be able to provide a list of active programs. Those programs are by occupation. So you would be able to determine which occupations really line up with what you're already teaching. And that the second point there is the office can also help your team understand if there's some requirements around building a pre-apprenticeship program. And I have not looked into Michigan. I can provide some follow-up information, but some states are moving toward requiring registering pre-apprenticeship programs. So it's good to know at the outset, what are the state's requirements around pre-apprenticeship that you would want to be aware of as you map your program. Next slide. So let's jump into, once you've had a conversation with someone from the Michigan Apprenticeship Agency office, the next step is really understanding what the currently available programs are. And so let's say that you teach IT courses, that you have an IET program that focuses on some information technology, and you see that there is a sponsor in your state that has an active, or in your area that has an active IT help desk apprenticeship program. With the document that we've noted on the slide here is as part of something called a packet of standards. Every apprenticeship program, the way that they are developed and registered, is using something called apprenticeship standards. Within that package, and we're gonna walk through pieces of that package, there is a minimum qualifications and selection procedures component. Right there in that document, the document that the sponsor has, they're going to be able to tell you, for our, for example, IT Help Desk Apprenticeship Program, we require that potentially for that program, they may say, we require that someone have their high school diploma or GED. They may not. They may indicate that someone needs to have some relevant experience or not. They may indicate that they need to pass or complete a work keys or pass a drug screen. Anything that you need to know about minimum qualifications is right there. So that is going to help you understand what your students would either need or be able to do or pass in order to qualify for the program. The selection procedures is also going to outline how that program sponsor intends to, quite frankly, find potential candidates. And this can be really helpful as you're having a conversation to say, you know, we actually could be one of your talent pools, and it can help with building a pre-apprenticeship program and with marketing your program to potential sponsors if there's more than one sponsor for that occupation in the state or in your area. Next slide. The next piece in that standards package is that we're going to touch on now is something called the related technical instruction outline. I'm not walking through these pieces in the order they would appear in the package, but in terms of the order of relevance for the work that you're doing, which is right now, you're doing some tremendous instruction, and you have your courses outlined. You know what it is that you're going to be teaching your students. Well, by looking at the related instruction outline for an apprenticeship program, it's going to show either specific courses or specific topics of instruction that sponsor intends every apprentice to learn through the related instruction component of their program. The core technical instruction courses would map to the workforce training competencies for the IET component. And then most programs will also have, we really hope that they have an employability or core, again, as Michelle was noting, not soft skills, but sort of core employability training around things like conflict resolution, communication, problem solving. And those would be, those types of courses outlined in the standards would map to the workforce preparation skills for your IET. And Michelle and Nicole, you just correct me on anything that I'm not getting right here on the IET side. So you, okay.
I was on mute saying, yeah.
So you've met with your ATR, you've talked about the occupation that you're currently training your students toward, you're teaching them some core skills and knowledge area toward. So they know the occupation. The ATR has said, here are some active programs in your area. You've had a conversation with that sponsor or sponsors to understand their standards. What types of requirements are necessary potentially for your students to apply? You understand how they're going to, what types of courses now that they are going to require as related instruction. This next piece is to have a conversation around partnering for enrollment and services. You want to ensure that the applicant, your student, is going to meet the enrollment criteria for the program, and that the sponsor understands the types of supports that are needed. So, for example, you're going to want to consider maybe an individual learner's success plan that includes elements for support learner needs, for accessibility needs, enrollment criteria. You're going to want to basically just work with that sponsor to figure out, okay, well, what is it that the sponsor needs, and how can you demonstrate your value, hopefully working hand in hand with your local workforce board. Most employers have no idea, as we were noting in the chat, they have no idea that they have a ready-made pipeline of applicants through your program in the workforce system. Nicole, I don't know if you wanted to speak, or Michelle, if you wanted to speak to anything here around student supports for success.
No, I think here some of the things to think about are looking at, are there any accessibility needs? Also talking through college and career planning. And as Katie talked about, any kind of enrollment criteria that, and helping to support them with that. Materials to distribute while you're working through that intake process. And simplifying the process if you can in ways so that it's not overcomplicated. Are there things like counseling that you need to, might need to be there to address learners' unique challenges? Make sure they have, we have the tracking systems that support ongoing monitoring and documentation, especially in terms of what you need to provide back to the employer and also what you'll need from them. And then all the things you need is policies and practices and structures that would help support the staff as well as your partners. Maybe consider cohort or a mentoring program for your learners, peer-to-peer support, as well as maybe a mentor. The RA also has, once that might be a part of, it is a part of the registered apprenticeship program, right? Katie, correct me if I'm wrong there, to have a mentor once they are in the registered apprenticeship program.
Yes, they will all have
Building that into the pre-apprenticeship program would be something to think about in order to help them persist and succeed in that IET pre-apprenticeship program. Just some thoughts there. Katie?
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay.
So the next piece is, and I know we're putting a lot out there, but we're also going to have materials on our Center of Excellence website, and are happy to do additional coaching for smaller groups after this. The next piece is looking at the work process schedule. So you've looked at the selection and the minimum qualifications and selection procedure. You've looked at the related training instruction. The next piece is called the work process schedule, and this is going to break down some key components of the on-the-job training, that they're going to receive. The document is going to include some things right up front around things like how long the program is expected to be, their wage schedule, what they can expect to earn. But then it really is the key piece here is that it's going to lay out the type of work tasks that they are going to be trained on during their apprenticeship. So it's going to list things like, for example, if it was, let's say it was a medication tech or a pharmacy tech or CNA apprenticeship program, it would list things like, patient intake or patient specific tasks related to patient care. And so understanding what it is that they're going to be requiring in the on-the-job learning part, you'll be able to sort of track that to what you're currently doing, mapping it to your IET program, looking for points of alignment. Another piece of this work process schedule is that it's going to tell you if it's a time-based program, a competency-based program, or a hybrid. And the reason that that's important is because there is the potential for your learners through a pre-apprenticeship pathway to actually, through your program, complete some of those requirements. So they effectively are sort of have a head start on their apprenticeship program before they've even started. The apprenticeship program sponsor can award credit for prior experience. They can award credit for prior learning. And all of those, when you understand what it is that the sponsor needs for the on-the-job training around competencies or experience and the related instruction, you would be able to tee up a pool of candidates to say, you can already award them sort of 50 hours toward their required 144 hours of instruction. Or by finishing this course, they will be able to, I can, as the instructor, validate competency in for these work process tasks. So it's a huge benefit both to your program, your learners, and to the sponsor, because you're providing them with a pool of candidates that are apprenticeship ready from day one. The next slide. I think we're going to talk about that. There we go. So as I touched on, the apprenticeship program lines out both the instruction and the on-the-job tasks that can be mapped to the IET. Michelle, do you want to speak to the to how the standards review will come in here?
Sure. And so, as Katie was talking about it, the single set of learning objectives are required for an IET program. So that's that three-legged stool. You have to have the adult education content standards, the workforce preparation activities, and then the workforce training competencies. So where that aligns and meshes up so well is with those standards for each of the RA programs. And so then those three components, those three parts work together you work together with that co-planning and of the curriculum to function cooperatively. So those individual integrated learning objectives that you have for each module or section of your pre-apprenticeship IET program then combine to become a single set of learning objectives for the entire IET pre-apprenticeship program. So, and one example also with the workforce training activities, those could also include the on-the-job learning component that's in the RA pre-apprenticeship program as well. So there are tools. I think the next slide. Yeah, the next slide has the tool that you can use. This is an example of a completed SSLO template that you can use. You can find this blank template and then all the explanations around how to develop a single set of learning objectives in the IET design toolkit. So this is what it looks like for a 3-unit IET pre-apprenticeship program. And again, this is what it might look like. It works for you when you're identifying the workforce training skills and competencies first, and then creating the integrated learning objectives for the program's SSLO. So this works out fabulously. As Katie said, each RA program comes with a set of standards, so you'll be able to work from those to embed the other elements of the IET program. Up at the top is what we call, in that grade portion, is what is called the single set of learning objectives. It's a combination of the integrated learning objectives within each of the units below that in those 3 separate tables. So Katie's going to walk through other elements of the planning and development process on the next slide.
We've touched on this briefly, but this breaks down those work tasks that we talked about. I think it can be really helpful for your program to see these are exactly the things that your students would be doing on the job as apprentices. And you could even have conversations, and we've seen this work well, between education providers such as CTE programs for, in some cases, youth CTE programs or adult programs, where they actually incorporate maybe even pieces of these tasks through job shadowing, through some experiential learning, even prior to apprenticeship. So you can start to thread some of this into your on-the-job or your work-based learning component of your IET. So next slide. And I touched on this earlier. This is an area where you can provide huge value to an employer or to a sponsor. Again, we said, ideally, if sponsors, employers have a partnership with you, that they're going to have this pool of candidates that aren't just, hearing about an apprenticeship program and applying kind of cold, but they've come through your program as effectively as a pre-apprenticeship program where you're setting them up for success. So they know exactly what it is that they're applying for. You actually ideally create an agreement with that sponsor. You have an articulated agreement that's going to show that your students are fast-tracked as priority applicants for their program, and that you'll be able to provide them with a tool so to say that once they've successfully completed your program, the sponsor or employer can apply, for example, so many hours of on-the-job learning experience toward the apprenticeship program requirements, or they can apply so many hours of instruction credit for that instruction from your program to the apprenticeship program. And so the benefit here is, of course, it maximizes the student's time in your program, because now they're not just completing your program in order to gain the benefits of completing your program as a standalone, but it's also mapping directly to their next career pathway. And it's going to accelerate their program, their time to completion. This can be, again, it's a benefit to your learners. It's a benefit to the employer sponsor, because they have someone that's coming in. They've already been prepared to know that they've met the minimum qualifications for application. They are bringing in ideally, you've talked about apprenticeship in the classroom. They understand what the opportunity is, that student potentially has already been certified as WIOA eligible through the local workforce board to receive at a minimum supportive services, if that's a need of theirs. And then they're going to be able to start day one with having already gotten some credit for prior experience and or prior instruction through your program. Next slide. Nicole and Michelle, this is something that you guys created. Would love for you to be able to speak to this.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. So we're hoping this has gotten everyone excited, or at least increased your awareness about the possibility of bringing a pre-apprenticeship IET program to your learners. To get going, your very first action step would be to identify partners who are sponsoring or supporting an RA. And then secondly, if not familiar to you already, scout out some of those community organizations that can provide supportive services for your learners. And then after solidifying your partner employer and possibly a RA sponsor, then that's when the co-planning work really begins with aligning the IET curriculum. So at that point, you would assemble a design team. And again, we want to make sure you understand this is a partnership and not something that we're expecting like an adult education program to do on its own. And then together, then you would define the goals for the pre-apprenticeship from the participants' perspective, the program's perspective, and then also the partner's perspective. And then with those goals in mind, then it's time to start the actual curriculum building to include the contextualization of the adult education and literacy activities within those workforce training skills that we talked about earlier, and then identify your workforce prep activities, short-term certifications, aligning then your IET with the RETI requirements for the CPL. So that all sounds like it's really simple when I say it just like that it just be instant pudding, but we all know that that's not going to happen. But what can help is the IET design toolkit. It will really help you in this phase of the process when you're developing and designing and trying to align your curriculum with the pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship program standards. Nicole, do you want to talk us through the next parts?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And also, as you guys can see the QR code, but I also chatted it for you all to access this on our website. But it's also as part of the design and plan, as Michelle was talking about, the aligning the IET curriculum, which we know takes work, and as she was explaining, but embedding those on-the-job training opportunities into the pre-apprenticeship program. You know, what are the best strategies? What are the best ways to build those skills that are seamless within that learning environment? And also within these embedded job opportunities or on-the-job training opportunities is different job shadowing, maybe short-term hands-on training on site through the IET program and or the pre-apprenticeship instruction. And then also really noting those competencies as you build towards the RAP requirements. And I think a lot of what Katie was talking about with those competencies, documenting, mapping, you know, continue to build off that roadmap. And then the final one is implement RAP enrollment process. And that is, you know, developing that direct entry agreement with the sponsor for the pre-apprenticeship program completers. And also participants complete that pre-application assessments and, you know, present those candidates to those sponsors. And we talked a lot about at the beginning in terms of the hallmarks of a high quality pre-apprenticeship, with really, you know, supporting those students from the beginning, identifying that pathway, what skills it takes, if there's any additional supports to build those skills, making sure to support that alignment. To make sure that that enrollment process is a little more seamless here. And then assist and coach participants with RAP application process, support and sponsor with those articulated CPE, CPL verifications towards those registered apprenticeship program requirements. And then also connect those pre-apprentices with the needed support services and ongoing support services. Again, just like you always do throughout the adult education program, support your students as things come up and have that backup plan of supports as well to ensure and support that their success within this. So with that being said, we have time for questions. I'm going to share a couple more resources in the chat. We have the QR codes, but we have the chat open, so I'm going to share them on the chat as well. So whatever method that you guys want to access, go for it. But what I'm going to share is the Workforce Systems Registered Apprenticeship Report that I alluded to before, that we will also be having one for adult ed based on the surveys we talked about previously, with TA resources that will be forthcoming from the center. Also how you can be a part of the center, collaborate, to Katie's point, work with us, have those meetings, and how we can support you all. So I'm going to share all those resources within the chat as well as we go to the slide, but feel free to ask any questions in the chat. You can take yourself off mute, turn the camera on if you feel like it, but we're ready for some questions for you all as we close this up. And there's all our contact information as well.
So I'm scrolling back through a couple of the items here. Do they need to be graduated participants, or can they be non-graduated? Is that, Michael, is that referring to, do you mean was that referring to something specific within Michigan? I'm reading from the bottom up. So, or was that referring to?
That means non-high school graduates, I think. Is that what you're asking, Michael? If you want to come off mute, that'd be great.
Yeah. Either way, correct.
Did he
Yeah.
respond? Okay.
He said either way is correct. Yeah, so
Yeah.
in terms of eligibility for an apprenticeship program, it is entirely up to the employer or sponsor of the program. So we have programs, there are a number of programs nationwide that do not require necessarily high school diploma. I will say that most program sponsors, and I'm not speaking to the state of Michigan, but I would say that the most employers and program sponsors, I think they would see a key piece of the value of your program is helping your adult learners achieve a GED or diploma equivalent. I'm not sure what it is referred to in the state. I don't know, Michelle, if you want to speak to that. Yeah, yes, exactly. If they're a state, right. Just looking at the notes here.
This depends response from Patrick was when I was asking if the state, if Michigan had any requirements regarding pre-apprenticeship, having to be registered in some states, and apparently his Mr. Brown or Ms. Brown found out from Patrick that Patrick is here. Okay,
great.
Hi,
Patrick. Jump on.
Michelle.
Hey, how
nice
are
to see
you?
Well,
My
hi.
camera's not working, or I'd say hi.
It's good to see you again and hear you, and you as well, Nicole. I know we've connected as well with Sharon through Sharon as well, and nice to see you, Katie. So yeah, it's a complicated it's a complicated answer, but I will put into the chat the state apprenticeship website, and maybe that would be helpful for folks as they're kind of poking around at this as well. The other thing that I think Tammy had asked me just to briefly share, and some of our folks have heard me talk about it, is we have a new grant in Michigan that will be released soon. I know I keep saying that, but we know how sometimes grants get rolled out. Soon means very soon, but sometimes soon also takes a couple of weeks longer than what you think. It's called MyStairs, the Michigan Strategic Targeted Apprenticeship Inclusion Readiness System. And there are 1,200 apprenticeship slots essentially available that'll be funded through partnership with the United States Department of Labor. But 200 of those have been specifically designated for adults without a high school equivalency or a completion. And so that is where our partnership and our work as adult ed providers, once that grant opens up, there'll be a competitive, equitable bid process, be able to be a part of that. And adult education's contribution would obviously be to have that participant complete their high school equivalency or their completion, their diploma, and then to work with their local Michigan Works Agency, their local workforce board, to place them in an apprenticeship, work with that local employer to perhaps provide some of that contextualization or some of the kind of entry-level foundational knowledge that they need to have. And then over the course of that grant, once they exit adult learning, they would obviously be on track to complete that apprenticeship. So that's an exciting opportunity that's out there for us in Michigan. And like I said, that will be coming very, very soon. So I thought this was a very ample time for Michelle and Katie and Nicole to kind of just, again, raise this up, and this whole integration as we go into a new program year of career and technical education and integrated education and training and apprenticeship. It's all interconnected and related, and trying to really just build a talent pipeline and elevate folks into their next level. So whether or not you choose to participate in the MyStairs grant, I still think it's really important that you're aware of these apprenticeship opportunities, apprenticeship requirements in the state, and spaces in which our learners, our clients can transition or be a part or be co-enrolled in programming in many different ways. So these are the experts nationally. And, as we go forward, we've had conversations about at the fall conference, having our state apprenticeship expansion team, talk a little bit more specifically about Michigan apprenticeship opportunities in some of our workforce, Michigan Works partners as well. So thank you for being here and sharing some of this great kind of detailed over landscape, because I think it's so important for us to have that foundational knowledge.
And Patrick, I noted it in the chat, but congratulations, genuinely. As Michelle is pointed out, and virtually every presentation that we do together, and continually reminds the Safal team that adult education represents the single largest, well, high school in the U.S. Am I phrasing that the way you phrase it, Michelle?
Yeah, we graduate the most high school graduates every year. in the
Yeah,
US.
and just like most employers have never worked with their local workforce board to understand the potential for support in any number of ways. Most employers aren't aware of really the rich value that their local adult education providers offer. And for folks with IET programs, it's just a hand in glove with pre-apprenticeship. And we would love to see as much focus as there has been. It's been great around community college support, even youth high school apprentice support. We feel, and COABE definitely supports a really strong push for the same awareness for adult learners. So I think with that, please do, Nicole, thank you for putting all of this together and keeping us on track. And Nicole and Michelle are fantastic partners on this. The Center of Excellence, as I mentioned at the top, is a Department of Labor grant-funded program. We are here to provide no-cost technical assistance and support. We are happy to work with your team, Patrick, in providing potentially ongoing or one-off trainings. If there are resources that would be helpful for you, for any of you, if there are certain topics that you say, oh, if there's a tip sheet on this, I would love that. Or can you help me connect with so-and-so? Just please reach out, go to the website, email any one of us, and we'll route it to the right person at the center. We are going to be we're having virtual office hours in 2 weeks here on using supportive services to support apprentices. So would love for you to scan that code, become a center partner so that you get updated invitations to all of our upcoming trainings. And thanks, Nicole, for popping in the website.
Hey, thank you, Katie, and thank you all. And I want to turn it over. I know Carrie has some last words that she wants to share.
Yeah, thank you all, Nicole, Katie, and Michelle, for presenting and sharing your depth of knowledge with us today. We so appreciate you sharing your information with us at MACAE. And again, the presentation materials will be made to all of you, made available to all of you at the end of the Institute. Thank you everyone for attending, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day after attending the 2:30 session with Latanya. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.